Hey, welcome to your horoscopes for the week. These are the horoscopes for the week ending July 30th. This is our last full week of July, and then we move into August. Next week, it's some pretty crazy stuff going on this week, actually. So we're gonna jump right in and hop to it, and we're gonna start as we always do with Aries. Aries continues to be focused on relationships, although there is an element of your day-to-day activities, with Jupiter, of course, influencing that this week. Jupiter's also going retrograde this week, and I'm actually looking that up right now because, of course, I am totally not prepared like I should be, but that is okay. Jupiter actually goes retrograde on the 29th of July, so it's going retrograde towards the end of the week this week, moving direct again in November. So we've got a few months of retrograde. And what happens when Jupiter goes retrograde is that Jupiter is, of course, all about growth and expansion. In some cases, it can represent greed. But in terms of growth and expansion, if your influence is Jupiter direct, it feels like you're growing and expanding a lot. When Jupiter goes retrograde, it feels like that growth is sort of slowing down a little bit, which can be really annoying, and really frustrating in all honesty, especially if you're on a roll, as you know, Aries is, you're on a roll, and then it all just sort of like tapers off a little bit. On the flip side of that, though, um, in some cases, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I will use my brother as an example. Actually, he's an Aries, currently moving in, or was moving into a new place. And so as he's moving into this new place, he's moving before his lease is up on the old place. So he's spending a couple of months actually paying double rent. Now, with Jupiter sort of backing off a little bit, that means that he goes from having to work all these hours to be able to do that double rent to going back to his regular hours and not necessarily paying that double rent. So in a way, for him, this Jupiter retrograde actually is really helpful for him because it allows him to sort of back it off a little bit and get a little bit of a rest. And even Aries, even Rams need a rest every now and then. So it has its good points and it has its bad points also. With growth, though, and expansion, you need to plateau every now and then, if you know what I mean. You can't be constantly moving forward all the time. Sometimes it's like in spiritual growth. You have to take the time to use what you learned before you move forward. And so in a way that will also that in a way, that's how Jupiter's retrograde is going to play out in kind of a good way for you as well. So keep that in mind. Focus on relationships, focus on your day-to-day duties. I feel like in terms of your daily schedule, it may feel like you don't have a lot of time for any of your relationships this week, honestly. When you have so many things that are going on in your life, you're working, you've got goals, you're working towards those goals. It sort of feels like you're leaving everybody behind a little bit. And that there's a little element of guilt there when that happens. But the truth is that the people that really understand and support what you're doing, they will continue to support what you're doing. The people that don't support what you're doing, they're going to get in the way. And it really gives you a very clear picture of who's on Team Ram or Team You and who's on Team themselves. And unfortunately, that sort of eye-opening thing that happens emotionally, it's very challenging. But if you look at it from a logical standpoint, this is exactly what you need. If you are in the process of growth, if you're in the process of moving towards your goals, regardless of what those goals are, Anybody that supports you is going to be understanding. They're going to be helpful. Anybody that doesn't want to see you grow is going to get in the way of that. And when you know who those people are, it helps you to be able to, if not cut ties with them, at least keep them at arm's distance while you prepare for what it is that you're doing. A lot of times people will allow those people to stop them from moving forward. They will listen to the destructive words that these people are saying, that these people are trying to get you to stop, because if you progress forward, it proves that they're sitting in the same place and not doing anything. And they don't want to sit there by themselves. They want somebody else sitting there with them. You have to ask yourself, is it more important for you to achieve your goals and be successful in whatever way you choose to be successful in? Or is it more important for you to allow a person who isn't motivated to change their life to allow you to sit there and not change yours? That's really what you want to think about. So that's what I have for you guys. And I am going to move on to Taurus. We've got Mars moving into conjunction with Uranus this week, which means that both planets are moving into the same position. So they're not, I mean, obviously, if you look in the sky, they're pretty far away from each other. But from our viewpoint, Mars and Uranus are like almost right on top of each other. If you could see Uranus from the sky, which you really can't without a very high-powered telescope. The problem or the issue with that for us fixed signs, and Taurus is one of those fixed signs this week, is as Mars moves into conjunction with Uranus, it moves into that square with Saturn. And also, because Mercury is in Leo, this square becomes a T-square. It's a much bigger aspect. So it doesn't start off that way at the beginning of the week. It actually starts off as just the square that we've been dealing with already between Uranus and Saturn. Once Mercury moves into position about Tuesday, that's when this becomes a much bigger challenge, unfortunately. A much bigger challenge that you just would rather not deal with. Obviously, most of us don't. The challenge occurs really, or what does the challenge mean? Uranus is focused on money. Mars, of course, moves into conjunction with Uranus, also focused on money. Mercury's focus is on career. Saturn's focus is on those we love. The challenge happens when it feels like you're really focused on your career goals and on your money goals. But unfortunately, you have responsibilities in other areas as well. And it's those responsibilities in other areas that, most of the time you don't mind. I mean, we all have responsibilities in many different areas. But when you want to focus on one particular thing, you get distracted with all these other responsibilities. And it just sort of, it makes things confusing. Sometimes in my view, anyways, as a fixed sign, when I'm uber focused on where I want to be in my career, and I'm sitting in front of my computer for 2 days, just really focused on that. And, back when my kids were little, they'd come in and, Mom, can you do this for me? And of course I have to get up and I have to go and I have to do whatever it is that they need me to do. And it's really hard to get back into that focus again. And I feel like this has a lot to do with what this challenge means for Tauruses this week. It's not that you are not going to be able to focus on those goals. It just means that there's a lot of things that are going to come up to shift your focus to something else, it's more of a frustration really than anything else. And with Mars influence in there, that frustration is heightened because Mars really is all about frustration. Mars is the angry planet, but Mars is the ambitious planet. It's a huge amount of energy going into a very specific thing, which for you this week is money, right? So you got all this energy going into your career and how you're making money and how much money you want to make and your goals towards money. And you just got all these things coming up, these distractions coming in and saying, but wait a minute, you can't spend all your time focused on this because of course we need this over here. And it's a minor frustration. It's not something that's going to completely kill your goals unless you let it. And of course, I know you're not going to do that. So that is what I have for you guys. And we are going to move on to Gemini. The moon, of course, kicks off the week in Gemini, but is gone by the next day, actually moving out of your sign around noon Pacific time, I should say, on Monday. So that's a good thing. The moon being in your sign is not the worst thing in the world. Okay. It may cause more emotional reactions than you maybe normally would have, because the moon is a very emotional planet, but it is sort of interacting in ways that are helpful and yet not so helpful at the same time. And we're going to start with the helpful aspect is, of course, the moon moves into a trine with Saturn, both being air signs. A trine happens when there are two planets in two different air signs within certain degrees of each other. So with Saturn being retrograde right now and focus on those you love, your responsibilities toward those you love, Saturn's retrograde in that area kind of shows you where you tend to take on responsibilities that don't necessarily belong to you. And I know a lot of Gemini females actually that that this has a lot to do with, in terms of, you know, you've got adult children and you love your children, and you never really seems to let go of that responsibility over your children, kind of a thing. And while that's understandable, that somebody would do that, or that anybody would do that, I've done it a million times. I'm not even Gemini. It does make things complicated because this is your time. You've raised your children, you're done. You know, it's one thing to help them out every now and then. It's quite another to continue helping them full time. And so, you know, at this point, your kids grow up, you get older, it's supposed to flip around, right? Kids are taking care of you, not you taking care of the kids. So this trine kind of helps you be able to identify that and gives you the strength to say, okay, yeah, this is what I'm supposed to be doing right now. And, you know, the way that I've been doing it is not necessarily the way that I should be doing it right now. The difficulty lies in when the moon moves into a square with Neptune, and this can be a bit of a challenge. Neptune is also retrograde, and Neptune retrogrades are interesting because when Neptune goes retrograde, Neptune's all about our intuitive abilities. And so Neptune being in Pisces, Pisces is really the sign that's known for intuition. When it's retrograde, it sort of heightens that intuitive ability. So it's sort of backwards from most of the other retrogrades. When your emotional planet is in a negative aspect with your intuitive planet, this really means that emotions are getting in the way of something in particular. So if your focus is on long-term goals, which the moon being in your sign in that position is showing focus on long-term goals. What that means is that as you're looking at your long-term goals, it may be confusing as you're trying to plan and not necessarily seeing what it is that you actually need to do in order to achieve these goals. And that can be a little bit of a problem, because obviously if you can't see what it takes to achieve these goals, then obviously you're also you're looking at the possibility of setting up these goals for no reason at all, right? Because you have a goal, but if you can't see how you can achieve it, what's the point of the goal in the first place, kind of a thing. It's very temporary though. You know, if you're in an emotional state or you're too emotionally attached to what it is that you're doing, it does create a challenge for you. Give yourself some time, take a step back. Don't work on it on Sunday. Come back to it on Monday, kind of a thing, where things seem a little bit clearer than they did the day before. And that should kind of sort of work that out. So that's what I have for you guys. And we're going to move on to Cancer. Cancer continues to have Venus in your sign. So that boost of creativity is still very much alive and well in Cancer this week. And a couple of aspects here that we got going on with Venus is going to kind of sort of be helpful and kind of sort of not be helpful too. Let's look at the helpful first, and we're going to look at Venus's sextile with Mars at the beginning of the week as Mars moves into conjunction with Uranus in Taurus. When you're talking about a sextile, it is not a major aspect, but it is a minor, very helpful aspect. And when you have Venus and Mars working together, that kind of sort of balances out your emotional, logical way of thinking. Cancers tend to be very emotional people. And of course, as the moon moves in to conjunction with Venus about Tuesday, Wednesday, because the moon's going to move into your sign on Tuesday, moving out on Thursday. So that conjunction really happens in the middle on Tuesday, which is going to make this an even more powerful aspect, of course. As you are, your focus is on long-term goals in many ways. And so as you are coming up with your plans and your goals, there's a couple of things that happens here. You've got two very emotional planets playing in with Mars, which is a very sort of aggressive planet. And when that happens, of course, as you're coming up with your plan, you want to approach it in a very balanced way. You want to have, you know, when we're talking about this kind of balance, it's very much a masculine, feminine balance. And of course, masculine, feminine is also logical and emotional. So the more balanced you are when you're coming up with your goal plan, the better it is, because of course you're feeling your way through it as in terms of what feels good for you, but you're also coming up with what makes sense in terms of how to put this together, which can be very helpful. Now, Venus is also in a square with Jupiter. And so when the moon comes in on Tuesday and joins this square with Jupiter, it's going to heighten this problem a little bit also. Jupiter is not retrograde yet on Tuesday, but it will be by the end of the week. And Venus's square is not going anywhere by the end of the week. It will still be there. So you have this sort of it almost like a stunt your growth kind of a thing. Jupiter is of course focused on your day-to-day duties, and so it may feel like you just don't have time. You know, you're coming up with a goal plan of what you want to do, and unfortunately it looks like you just don't have time to get this done. That could cause an emotional reaction that says, well, if I don't have time, what's the point of even coming up with this plan? Truth be told, time changes, your schedule changes, everything changes. So it's not about whether you can or can't achieve your goal. It's more about whether you can or can't achieve your goal in the timing that you want to. So it's not a deal breaker. It just means that you may actually have to look at your goal plan and say, okay, well, I obviously don't have the time to achieve this goal within a week. Maybe I need to extend it out to 2 or 3 weeks. If I send it out to 2 or 3 weeks, then I can work and do what I need to do during the week, but I still have time outside of that to be able to focus on this. So really, it's all about taking that instant gratification thing out of it, okay? Everybody loves instant gratification. I'm a big fan of instant gratification, to be honest with you. But in reality, it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes you need to start a project and take some time before it ends. And for most people, that is very much relevant. So it all is your perception and how you look at it in terms of whether or not you're going to be successful or not. And if you talk to any quote unquote successful person, they would not tell you that everything was instant gratification. They would tell you that they had to work really hard for a long time in order to achieve that goal, because that's usually how that works. So if you think about it on those terms, it does make it a little bit easier. So that's what I have for you. And we're going to move on to Leo. Sun is officially in Leo. Happy birthday to all the Leos having birthdays this week. And Mercury is officially in Virgo. I'm sorry, in Leo. We're on Leo, not Virgo. Is officially in Leo as well. And it's really Mercury that's going to cause some challenges here. Sun's going to cause some challenges too, and let's actually focus on that the sun's challenge first, because it's actually the easier one when you think about it. The sun continues to be in opposition with Pluto. It's the beginning of the week all the way up until about the end of the week. We're looking at Friday when that sort of breaks up, and the moon of course is going to come into your sign this week, because if you're going to have a challenge, you might as well have the moon involved, right? It just, let's make it an emotional challenge, that helps, right? In terms of this opposition between the sun and Pluto, focus is on your career, at least in terms of where the planets are in your sign and what the planets are focused on. They're really very much focused on your career. Pluto is all about the home. So again, it kind of sort of feels like an imbalance between spending too much time at work or spending too much time at home. And so I happen to know of a Leo currently that is stuck at home right now dealing with rehabilitation from a surgery. And that's very difficult when it feels like you can only focus on one thing at a time. And most of the time, that is kind of how we see things, me personally, ever since I started doing mediumship, I have not been able to really multitask at all. My brain just doesn't really have the capacity to be able to focus on more than one thing at a time. And I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing, because I feel like when you're trying to focus on multiple things at once, it actually works against you, not so much for you, if that makes any sense at all. Let's get to the big stuff though here. Mercury, and of course the moon moves into conjunction with Mercury about Friday, so towards the end of the week, and we'll finish out the week in your sign. So this will be Friday and Saturday, really. Mercury's T-square with Saturn and Uranus becomes a much bigger challenge. The square between Uranus and Saturn has been there off and on for months, most of the year, really. It had a little bit of a break, and then Saturn went retrograde, and then it went right back. It hasn't really affected Leo up until now. It affects Leo when the moon's in there to, of course, aspect these planets. But now that we have Mercury and the sun, this aspect is actually going to last a little bit longer than it has. So a T-square is a pretty major challenge, actually, because it's an opposition between Mercury and Saturn, and a square with Uranus that also occurs with Saturn. So it's like a big triangle in terms of challenges. This is actually going to get worse next week when the moon moves into Scorpio and becomes an even bigger challenge, but luckily for a shorter amount of time. So what does this mean? When your focus is on career, Saturn's focus is kind of in the middle of the home and those you're responsible to or those that you love, and Uranus's focus is on money. This is actually going to create a challenge when it feels like, in terms of your focus on your career and making money, it also feels like there are others in your life that are demanding your responsibility to them. And that creates a bit of a problem, honestly. The problem of feeling like you're being pulled in a million different directions, and that pull in a million different directions is very frustrating, and very draining. Pardon me, energetically draining in many ways. Because when you feel like you're pulled in a million different directions, you really can't focus on one thing at a time. So it could be that it's your family that's pulling you. It could be your own health that's pulling you. It could be friends and relatives that are just so needy, and they don't necessarily want to wait until it's better. It's a good time for you. They want your attention right this minute. It's annoying is what it is. It's not a deal breaker. You can and you do have the ability to say, I will get to you. Let me finish up with this first. And if these people don't understand that this is what you need to do, maybe they shouldn't be around. But that's just my opinion. It doesn't mean that, obviously there's certain people in your life that you can't get rid of. It's not that easy. Family is one of those things where, in many cases you can't just walk away from them, but you do want to put up boundaries. And I think that this is really what this aspect is all about, is about making sure that you have healthy boundaries on other people. If this is you and your own health, then this is something that you have to address, especially if it's something that keeps coming up and getting in the way and you're not addressing it. So you really want to think about that in terms of, yes, going to the doctor and getting treatment and all that is going to put a dampener on your motivation to get anything else done. But if you do it, it's over with. You can move on from it, and it's not something that keeps popping up and being a problem over and over again. So that is what I have for you guys. And I am going to move on to Virgo. We are moving out of the secret closet, the triggers, which is good. And we are moving into those that support us, our support system, or what I like to call our personal cheerleading squad, which is awesome. Some people have a huge cheerleading squad. Some people have not very many in that cheerleading squad. It does depend on the individual. But I have, in my experience, I know of a lot of people, and Virgos tend to have a really big cheerleading squad, or at least that's how it looks. It looks like they have a really big cheerleading squad. The truth be told, they're not always there to cheer you on when you need them to be. And so this week is really kind of an opportunity to take stock of your cheerleading squad and really pay attention to who's there cheering for you and who's actually there hoping that they can jump on that dog pile and maybe get something for themselves, if that makes sense. There's always going to be those people. They're not going away anytime soon. What's really frustrating is when you have people that started off being a cheerleading squad and wind up in that other category of people that are more concerned about what you can do for them than what they can do for you. And that is really frustrating. And in many cases, really annoying as well, because you've probably been on their cheerleading squad for years for them, and they're just not giving back in the same way. This is a very common problem, unfortunately. And when you find yourself dealing with this very common problem, it can be very easy to get emotional about it. It can be very easy to emotionally react to it. Of course, that is absolutely not what you want to do. If they're not there to cheer for you, they don't need to be there from here on out. It's all there is to it. Unless you set up rules that say, I'm here to cheer for you, you don't have to cheer for me, kind of a thing. Which I suppose you could do if you really wanted to. Love is unconditional love is just that. It is being there for somebody else without expecting that in return. And we always have some of those people in our lives. So this week it really is all about not necessarily omitting your cheerleading squad, but just kind of taking stock of who's really there, who's really team Virgo, and who is team themselves. Because the truth of the matter is that those people that are team themselves, if that bothers you, they shouldn't be in that squad anymore. And it's as simple as that. Maybe they need to be put into a different squad, one that you can hang with them every now and then, but not necessarily rely on them for anything. So that's what I have for you guys. And we are moving on to Libra. It is still all about you Libras this week, although there is an element as we move into the 12th house, which is what I like to call the secret closet. This is where we keep all the stuff that we don't necessarily share with other people. Our emotional stuff, in some cases, our traumatic experiences are kind of sort of stuffed in there. And this week in particular, I really feel that it's not so much triggers from emotional experiences of the past. It's more about identifying the difference between what is a traumatic experience and what is not a traumatic experience. Then let me elaborate on that a little bit. There are individuals, I'm sure nobody that listens to my horoscopes, but there are individuals out there that everything is a traumatic experience. And the truth is that granted, each individual person does get to choose what they consider to be trauma and what they don't consider to be trauma. But you have to place some sort of boundaries on that also. I know of a lot of people, most people are actually like this. They'll go through their day and they'll have 5 good things happen, but it is the one bad thing that happened that they focus on. That's what they repeat to other people. That's the story that they tell. That is what they choose to focus on and to remember. And then it's as an afterthought, they go, oh yeah, and then these really cool things happen, kind of a thing. This week is really a good opportunity to turn that around. If you're focused on the negative all the time, things are always going to be bad. That's never going to change. If you're complaining all the time, things are always going to be negative. If you are focused on the trauma, then you're never grateful for the gifts that you get throughout the week. And this is a really good opportunity to take stock in that and to really pay attention to which kind of those people you are. Are you on the complainer side, or are you on the grateful side? The grateful side really takes the time to celebrate those little things. And it doesn't matter what they are. The fact that you hit no traffic that day is a good thing. The fact that you got a free ice cream cone when you ordered your meal at McDonald's is a good thing. They're little things, but a whole bunch of little things turn into one big thing. So in my view, if I focus on the good things that happened and instead of the one bad thing that did, I'm looking at life in a grateful way. And if I don't include those good things and continue to harp on the bad, then I'm actually approaching life in a negative way, non-grateful. Why is this happening to me, kind of a thing. And that phrase in itself is such a motivation killer. It's not even funny. So of course you want to avoid using that phrase if you can. So when I say this week, it's a good opportunity to take stock of how you look at those things. What I mean is, are you predominantly focused on the positive, this awesome thing happened to me? Or are you predominantly focused on the negative things that happen to you? The more you focus on the negative, the more it feels like your life is shit. The more you focus on the positive, the more you look at your life as a great life. And if you're not looking at your life as a great life, then what's the point of even being here? So you really want to pay attention to that. So that's what I have for you guys. And I am going to move on to Scorpio. Focus is still on the past, although we're moving into a new focus where focus is on you. This almost there this week, probably moving full on into that next week. Let me take a swig of this coffee. I do love sitting down with some of my favorite Scorpios for a cup of coffee. When you're focused on the past, it actually is a really good time to really pay attention to the situations, the things, the people that made you who you are, and decide whether or not you want to continue to give those people, those things, those situations power over what makes you who you are. The truth of the matter is, you make you who you are. The situations, the other people, all the other stuff that's happened really might have influenced it, but it doesn't have any control over what makes you who you are. You do. When I hear, and actually I just posted something on Facebook about this just the other day, where it was saying something about how people say the trauma that I've been in my life has made me who I am. It didn't. It influenced the choices that you made to be the person that you are right now, but it did not make you who you are. What makes you who you are is surviving the trauma. It's the healing from the trauma. It's the working through the trauma. It's taking the trauma and saying, you don't have any power over me. That is what makes you who you are. So this week is a really good opportunity to be able to look at that and to see where you're saying, my trauma made me who I was, and fix that. Take control over that. The truth of the matter is, you are the one who made you who you are. Your choices are what made you who you are. And you want to take the time every now and then to look at that and say, did I choose the right path? And if you did choose the right path, great. Throw yourself a little mini celebration because you did a great job. If you didn't choose the right path, it's an opportunity to choose a different path, because it doesn't matter how old you get. They say you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I don't believe that, although I am that old dog sometimes. I don't believe that. I believe that it doesn't matter how old you get, you can always change how you do things, how you approach things, and most importantly, who you are, whether it's who you are to yourself or who you are to others. And you don't want to focus too much on who you are to others, because that can be a negative influence also. So take the time to look in the past, to look at those situations, to see whether or not you allowed those situations or those people to make you who you are, or whether or not you're choosing who you are. Because when you choose who you are, you have the power to change things. When you let other things and other people change who you are, then you have no power. And you definitely don't want to live like that. So that's what I have for you guys. And we are moving on to Sagittarius. Sagittarius is all about the mind and how you think. And I really feel that ideas are coming into play for you guys this week. There's an element of the past there as we are starting to move into that also. And as we're moving into that element of the past there a little bit, I really get the sense that maybe ideas that you came up with in the past that didn't seem to work out then, it might be a good idea to take a new look at that, especially if it's something that you just didn't have the time to do before. You may actually have the time to do now. Or in terms of ideas for career growth, That may be something that wasn't prevalent back then, but it might be prevalent now. So it's always a good time. I don't look at ideas that didn't work out in the past as something that will never work out, or something that is never going to come to fruition. It's all about timing. And sometimes timing just isn't good for that particular situation back then. But now you actually have the time to entertain it, or you're in the right place to entertain it, or you're actually at the level you need to be in order to obtain it. So when you think about it on those levels, you definitely don't want to forget those ideas or never go back to them, because that might be exactly what you're looking for right now, and you're just not seeing it. When you look back into the past for things that you had done before, you also give yourself the opportunity to find what I call golden eggs that maybe just didn't hatch back then, but they're perfectly ready to hatch now. So this week is really all about that. Taking the time to look back into the past and see if some of those old ideas are going to work out. Just don't get distracted. It's very easy to get distracted, especially for Sagittarians, to get distracted on, all the other fun stuff that you did back then that you're maybe not doing now. You can spend some time entertaining that also. Just make sure that you come back to what it is that you need to be working on right now. So that's what I have for you guys. And I am moving on to Capricorn. Still have Pluto in Capricorn. Pluto is retrograde this week. And when Pluto moves into opposition with the sun, this is going to create a bit of a challenge for you guys. With focus on the home and the sun focused on career, again, this is a challenge that we had last week, which will continue all the way up until about Friday. So almost the entire week. But it will end by the end as we leave this week. This opposition creates a bit of a challenge when it feels like you are being pulled in two different directions. You have your responsibilities that you have to deal with at home. You have your responsibilities that you have to deal with at work. And, this can be as simple as, my water heater at home broke. I need to be at home in order to let the guy in to install the new water heater, but I have this meeting that I have to be at work. So coordinating those times, especially when you're dealing with people who are like, yeah, I'll be there sometime between 8 and 5 on Wednesday. That can be really, really challenging. But you guys are Capricorns. You guys are some of the most intelligent people that I have ever met. You will figure out a way to be able to do this, whether that means that you get somebody to stay at your house while somebody, so that they're there to make sure that that water heater is installed while you go to work, or you do your meeting remotely. You do it on Zoom. We got Zoom all over the place, right? So you hop on Zoom, do your meeting remotely while you're sitting at home waiting for your water heater. Either way, there is always a resolution to the problem. You don't want to look at a problem and go, well, that's it, I'm screwed, right? A lot of people do that. That is not the Capricorn way, right? The Capricorn way is to find a solution, to find a way around it. It always has been, right? And because you're a Capricorn, you can do that. The good news is Pluto continues his sextile with Neptune. Again, both planets are retrograde. So a sextile is a very helpful aspect. And with Neptune's focus on your day-to-day schedule, this actually helps maybe open up some holes in your schedule to make that challenge a little bit less of a challenge. So it is helping you out with that challenge a little bit. So that's what I have for you guys. And I am going to move on now to Aquarius. We still have Saturn in Aquarius, and we still have a square with Uranus. And because the Sun and Mercury are moving into Leo, that square becomes a T-square, a much bigger challenge, unfortunately. And we're going to start off that challenge with Mercury being the one in play here and not so much the Sun. A T-square is not the biggest challenge. Trust me, that is coming within the next couple of weeks. Don't worry about it. but it is a pretty major challenge. It's 3 planets. Actually, we're looking at 4 or 5 because the moon is, of course, going to play in this, and Mars is moving into conjunction with Uranus. So now we're actually looking at almost the majority of the planets playing into this challenge. We have an opposition between Saturn and Mercury, and of course, the moon joins Mercury at the end of the week. We have a square with Uranus, and Mars is moving into conjunction and will be in conjunction with Uranus by the end of the week. So at the end of the week, this challenge becomes a really big one, right? In terms of the opposition between Saturn and Mercury, Saturn's focus is very much on the home right now. Mercury's focus is very much on career, and the moon kind of sort of brings a bit of your support system focus into that. So this is also going to mean that it feels like you're pulled in several different directions and you have nobody to support you, and that's going to cause an emotional reaction. To me personally, I feel that on a daily, weekly basis, right? I spend half of my time at home. I spend half my time in my office. And in the middle of all that, I'm taking care of elder family members. I have my family at home. My family at home really needs to be more supportive. And I've been on them a couple of times with this. I'm not here. So you guys have to really step up and take care of this, take charge of what needs to be taken charge of. And it is frustrating when you just feel like you're talking to a bunch of people who aren't hearing a word that you say. And so this is really what this challenge is all about. When you add Mars and Uranus to this challenge, their focus is very much on money. And so again, this brings this sort of, I need the support. I'm being pulled in several different directions. And of course, I don't have the money to fix this problem either. So you got to come up with creative ways to fix this problem instead of the easy, let me just hire a maid to come and do this, which, by the way, I really would love to do. And when I do have the money, I definitely do. But if you don't have the money to do that, you're stuck having to deal with it in another way. So it really is about coming up with creative ways around the situation. If the ways that you've dealt with this problem before aren't working, it's time to come up with a different way of approaching it. If you're continually trying to solve the problem in the same way, you're just frustrating yourself more. What's the point in that? So find a different way to communicate, find a different outlet to deal with it. If it's a money thing and you need more money, find a way to make more money. There's a million different ways out there to make money. You just have to be open enough to do it. And of course, when I say a million ways to make money, I am talking legal ways, okay? You just have to be open to try something a little different. That's all. When I need extra money, I go Grubhub. And I don't make millions off of it, but I make enough money to get by, to get the things that I need to, sometimes I just do it just specifically for this particular amount of money so that I can get somebody to come clean my house because I'm not getting the support at home to clean my house. It's little things like that. There's a million ways to do a side gig these days. It really is unfortunate if you're not looking into those things. So that is what I have for you guys this week. And I am going to move on to Pisces as we finish up with Pisces. We still have Neptune, of course, which is very much focused on your day-to-day schedule. But Pisces focus really is on those that you love. And it's incorporating, of course, those people into your day-to-day schedule as you got a million things going on. Sometimes you don't get to spend as much time with people as you would like. And Vespa is actually moving into Pisces as well. and as Juno has been in Pisces, and both of these are they're minor planets. They're more like dwarf planets, but they do have a bit of an effect on the zodiac, depending on how you look at it, of course. Vespa is known as the eternal flame on the hearth that burns on the home hearth. And of course, when we think about the hearth, we think of home. We think of that place that we consider home. Sometimes we look back to our childhoods and that comfortable place that we considered home, but it's all about recreating that space for yourself now. If you, of course, if it's not something that exists now, you want to recreate that space for yourself now. Juno is known as the great consort. And so partnership is really a big word that we use around Juno. And when it comes to focus being on people that you love, a lot of us have partners in some way or another. And so this is not necessarily bringing up a challenge. Partnership really is all about working together for a common goal. And if you are focused on those you love, you're also focused on that partner as well. Again, when it comes to communication with your partner, it's always important that you take the time to make sure that you communicate properly. If you're arguing or with your partner, that's really not proper communication. Usually, most arguments are, you did this, yeah, well, you did this, yeah, well, you did this. And so nothing is ever really getting resolved. Sitting down with your partner and saying, you know, I feel that whenever you do this particular thing, it feels disrespectful to me. Let's have a conversation about that and see how we can change that to make it better for both of us. It usually leads to a conversation where you can actually resolve an issue. Okay. Whereas when you fight about something, most of the time issues aren't resolved unless the fight is followed up by a conversation. So you want to look at it in terms of what's helpful, because the things that you have been doing in the past that aren't helpful are not going to be helpful here either. And that's what it really comes down to. You want to solve the problem, or do you want to complain about the problem? If you're complaining about the problem, it's not getting resolved. If you are not working to fix the problem, it's not going to get resolved there either. So you do want to make sure that you're making the right choice and approaching these situations in the right way. So that's what I have for you guys. And that is what I have, period, for this week. Sounds like a little bit of a crazy week, but I know you guys can get through it because you're badass. And knowing, of course, that it's coming gives you the opportunity to prepare for it, right? Which is always makes things a little bit easier. I'm Melissa Bruce, the Heavy Metal Psychic. Thank you so much for watching the horoscopes this week. I hope you enjoy. If you do, please make a donation. I would really appreciate it. You don't have to, though. Horoscopes are always free, but donations are definitely welcome. Again, I'm Melissa Bruce, the Heavy Metal Psychic. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys next week. Kick ass this week, everybody.